Hello everyone, my name is Dara Rath and I'm the pastor at Faith Lutheran Church in Port Elgin, Ontario, Canada. And each week I bring you a story that takes about 5 minutes to watch. And this week the story comes from a book called Flowers in the Wind by Robert Coos. There was once an elderly man named George. He had never married. For almost all of his working years, George worked as a sailor traveling the oceans of the world. Because he was always at sea, he never had a home to call his own. His nephew Bill had always liked his Uncle George. So when it was time for George to retire, he invited him to come and live with his wife and 5 children. This arrangement was beneficial to both George and Bill's family. For his part, George now had a stable roof over his head. For Bill and his family, they could travel the world in imagination as they listened with fascination to George's adventures he had when he was sailing the world's seas. Sometimes when Bill would listen to the stories, his Uncle George told he would become bored and disconnected with his family life. He would think how nice it would be to roam the world free from the responsibilities that he had as a husband and father. Once he even expressed this wish to his Uncle George. One evening, as Uncle George was telling one of his stories of some faraway, exotic land, he mentioned that he had a map of buried treasure. Well, Bill was fascinated with the idea of a treasure map. So when Uncle George died a few years later, Bill went through his uncle's few belongings. Sure enough, there was an envelope that Uncle George had addressed to him. Inside was a map, a treasure map. With his heart pounding and hands shaking, Bill studied the map very carefully, trying to figure out just where the treasure was to be found. Finally, he located the exact spot where the treasure was. It was his own home, the very spot where he was at that very moment. His Uncle George had truly left him a beautiful treasure, the realization that his own home, his own family, was a treasure. Well, Bill was a fortunate man. He had a family that was intact and loving. His home life was good. But as we know, sometimes families are racked by domestic violence or alcoholism or other forms of addiction. Sometimes parents have fallen out of love and are staying together simply for economic security or for the sake of their children. Sometimes homes have children and youth who are problematic and causing grief to their parents. And sometimes homes are plagued with poverty or ill health. I know, as Robert Coos says, there are some pessimistic people in this world who think the family is dying. I disagree most heartily. Not only is the family not disappearing, it is thriving. In fact, today there are more types of families than in any time in the history of the world. There are traditional extended families. For example, there are 3 or more generations that live under one roof. There are nuclear families of mom, dad, and children. There are single-parent families, blended families, families with adopted children, and many other configurations. Sometimes people consider those they live with their family when they are far from their native land. Some people consider their church community their family. I know of monks who consider their fellow monks their family. And some of us have many families, biologically based families and those of a more spiritual nature. So don't believe the naysayers who proclaim the death of the family. The family will never die. For as long as people live, they will love. And as long as they love, they will seek to form bonds with others to share this love in an intimate way. And so that's the good news I have for you this week. I love this story of hope because we need some hope in this very challenging world that we are living in at the moment. So thanks for taking 5, and blessings on your day.